There are a number of corrections that need to be made to the shelter deck. Starting forward, these plastic tabs need to be removed. They will be replaced with photo etch for a ladder that will be installed in that location. Then, according to the HMS Hood Association's guide for this kit, these 3 holes here and here can be filled. These holes are for the installation of part E25. These ready lockers were actually not installed in real hood and therefore can be removed. And as per the suggestion on the HMS Hood Association's website, I've moved them down to the enclosed forecastle deck, as you saw in the previous video. Moving aft again, these splinter shields need to be raised slightly. To raise them, I'll use a piece of metal that I cut off of an old photo etch fret. Once again, I'm following the guide of the HMS Hood Association as to where this should go. I'll glue down the strip with super glue and then blend in the line with putty. Next, some consideration needs to be given to the openings for the staircases. These openings have a recessed area. This recess is to accommodate the plastic tab at the top of the plastic ladders. Since these ladders will be replaced with photo etch, that tab won't be present, so I need to decide what I'm going to do about that recess. For these openings, I can fill this area quite easily and keep this hole to be roughly the same size. The problem with me doing that is that it'll then be inconsistent from these aft openings. For the aft openings, I also have to take into consideration the wooden deck, and the wooden deck doesn't take into consideration the fact that I'm using photo etch. That means that the openings on the wooden deck are sized for the plastic ladders and not the photo etch ones. Which leads me to think that the better solution to make the wooden deck align with the plastic deck is to completely open up this hole. That does mean that these openings will be out of scale, but I think that's the lesser sin, because at least the openings will align with the wooden deck, and all the openings that are in the similar area will be of the same size. And that leads me on to the 5th opening, or where there should be a 5th opening, and that is this block. According to the HMS Hood Association, this is an accidental representation of what is in fact a canvas cover, and it should be an open area where a stairway goes through, just like these ones. So I will cut this off, fashion a hole of the similar size, and then use a spare photo etch ladder that I have from another kit to install in that location. Fortunately, this opening is in the area where there is a wooden deck, which does mean there is a convenient hole in the wooden deck that will allow me to have a visually clean looking opening that is of the same size as the others in the area. Moving aft again, the HMS Hood Association points out another error on this deck. These flat rectangles should be larger box vents. Since the detail upgrade kit that I have for this model didn't provide these vents either, I raided the box for my HMS Prince of Wales, and I'll be repurposing these box vents in their place. They'll be installed after I've installed the wooden deck. But before installing the wooden deck, I need to finish painting this deck. That will involve painting or touching up at least the walls in XF53, and then painting this area in XF54 to represent Semtex and XF79 to represent Cortesine. Once all of that is done, the deck will be ready to be installed onto the ship. To start, I'm going to increase the heights of these splinter shields. From the images of the gun tub that I've seen, the step up at the aft of the tub should be roughly double the height as to what it is provided in this kit, and that the step section doesn't run at the same height all the way to the forward of the gun tub. There's a step down in the curved section of the tub before it transitions to the straight section that runs to the edge of the deck. That step down is roughly half the height of the step, and then it transitions down to the lowest level at the very edge of the tub. To raise the height of the splinter shield, I decided that the best material to use is a piece of metal. I cut this metal strip off of a fret from one of my old photo etch kits. Basically, I rummaged through my old photo etch frets until I found one that had a bar roughly the size of that step up in the plastic splinter shield. Once I had 2 strips of the correct width and at the same length, it was then just a matter of bending them over a cylinder to get them into this curved shape that approximates the top of the splinter shield. To initially stick them down, I apply extra thick superglue to the base of the splinter shield extension, and then I position it on top of the plastic splinter shield. This was surprisingly easy. Because this is a curved section of the splinter shield, it makes it a little bit easier to balance this thin piece of metal on top of the rather thin plastic splinter shield. Once tacked in place, I made adjustments to the metal strip to ensure that it was as best aligned with the plastic splinter shield as possible, and then reinforce the bond with extra thick superglue. My plan is to put on excess glue and material so that I have a surface that I can then sand off. So what I'm going to be doing is in effect encasing the metal strip in glue and putty so that I can sand it back and create a smooth finish and hopefully hide the seam line. I then repeat the process on the other side of the ship using the exact same method and get them glued down, at least initially, very easily. If you do hear noise in the background, I apologize for that. Having a rather big storm here and the wind is just not letting up. So if you're hearing noises in the background, that's what that is. This video is part of a build series on the HMS hood. If you are enjoying this video and would like to see other videos in the build series, then follow the link to the playlist in the cards above. If you have any questions that you would like me to answer, then feel free to post them in the comment section below. And don't forget to subscribe to support the channel. While the superglue that I placed on the metal strips is drying, I moved on to removing these plastic tabs that stick out from the shelter deck. These are the points where the plastic ladders or staircases are supposed to be connected. I, of course, will be replacing that plastic with photo etch, so these platforms are not required. They will be also replaced with photo etch at the same time. So I need to remove them and clean up that section of the deck. This is a simple process of clipping and filing the deck. Keeping with the theme of clipping and filing things off the deck, the next thing to do is to remove this block. This block is supposed to represent the canvas above the staircase that is really supposed to be here. Trumpeter molded this block in error, and for our purposes it does not need to be present. This is quite a conveniently placed piece of plastic to remove. This area of the deck is going to be covered with a wooden deck veneer. So if there is any damage to the deck itself or the details around it, it doesn't actually matter because it will be covered with that wooden deck veneer. So I'm able to cut off the plastic with my clippers without any concern for causing unnecessary damage. Once the plastic top is off, I'm able to get a small file into the hole, which is enough for me to start opening it up. And after opening it up a bit, I'm able to put in a larger file to more quickly open up that hole. I am trying to keep it at the same width and length as the other openings so that it can align nicely with the wooden deck. But if I do go a bit too far, it's not going to really matter because the wooden deck will create a nice edge for me. Nevertheless, I am trying to do this properly and trying to keep it in the correct position. While I'm opening up holes in the deck for ladders, I might as well work on the other ladder openings. These ones have a small plastic tab. This plastic is actually very thin, and because of the good lines that are already molded into the model, I'm able to cut through it quite easily with a hobby knife. Once cut to the appropriate length down the sides, I'm able to bend it downwards and snap it off and create a clean line. It's then just a matter of using a file to neaten up the edges a little bit. I have to repeat this process 4 times. There are 5 openings, the one additional one that I've had to open up because of the error, and then the 3 that are molded in. 3 of the openings are in the area where there will be a wooden deck veneer, and 2 of them are in the area where the deck will be painted. Do need to be a little bit more careful with the openings in the area where they're going to be painted, but in reality this is a simple task, so there's not much to worry about here or to get wrong. Next thing to do is to fill some holes. These holes are forward of the splinter shields that I've just raised. Trumpeter had provided 6 ready lockers for installation in this area, but that is not correct, and as per the recommendations from the HMS Hood Association, these ready lockers were moved down to the enclosed forecastle deck. You saw that happen a few videos back. Since this area of the deck will be bare, these holes need to be closed and the deck needs to be smoothed off. Now that all the glue and putty is down, it's just a matter of giving everything an opportunity to dry. Once it's dry, I can then move on to sanding. After giving the deck a few hours to dry, I start by removing the excess glue on the splinter shields. Initially, I work off the excess using curved files, and then transition to 500 grit sandpaper that I've rolled into a cylinder. The outer face of the splinter shield is considerably easier to deal with. There I can just use a bar file and sand it down to a smooth finish. After completing the sanding of the exterior of the splinter shields, I move on to sanding the holes where the ready lockers used to be using 500 grit sandpaper. That is the last of the corrections that can be made to the shelter deck at this stage. The only thing that I haven't corrected just yet are the box vents that go at the aft of the shelter deck. Since those are just photo etch elements that I can install at a later point, I'm not going to be installing them at this stage. Obviously the wooden deck needs to be installed first anyway, but I will install them at the same time that I install other deck features for the ship. The last thing to do in this video is to spray the deck in XF53. This is the color for the hull for HMS Hood. After spraying the deck, any defects will be revealed. There were a few, I spent some time correcting them, but got it into a state that I'm happy with, so that it can be ready for the next phase of the construction, which is to paint the deck and install the wooden deck. I think this is a good place to stop the video. In the next video I'll paint the shelter deck and then install the wooden deck on it. If you would like to support this channel or see how the ship looks when it is completed, then please subscribe. Thanks for watching. Cheers.